Welcome to the Geekdom, Episode 4, Gaming, the Ultimate Survival Tool.
Just your ability to make something out of nothing.
Welcome to the Geekdom is awesome!
It's suddenly a giant badger.
Games and movies are the escape.
It is a creative outlet.
I'll have to roll the dice for that.
The best man at my wedding I met over a game table.
For as long as humans have gathered together, we have played games. Games are not just distractions from real life, they are rehearsals for it. They let us practice courage, problem solving, failure, imagination, friendship, and survival, all inside a world where the stakes are pretend, but the feelings are real.
Toy soldiers, or at least the idea of toy soldiers, have been around since like Egyptian times. Thousands of years ago, little kids were like, oh, if I have my soldier fight my chariot, you bang your toys together and you're like, oh, the chariot wins. So I think that the idea of like action figures or toy soldiers have been around for a long time.
And I've always been enthralled with making adventures and little figures. There's something about them. There was a Risk game that was more of a Japan Shogun, and those miniatures were amazing because you had the Shoguns, you had the ninja. It was cool. And so I'd make my own games with that ever since I was a little kid.
If anybody's seen the movie The Patriot, there's the whole thing where, there's the little kids' toy soldiers that are lead, and he keeps like melting them down and turning them into bullets. Those lead soldiers, those were painted by, folks all across Europe and American colonists, because the idea was you would paint them up and you'd set up regiments. And it was literally the equivalent of like a bag of green plastic army men you'd buy at like a toy store. And then you had companies like Ralpartha, who is an English company, and they used to do like sculpting. So they'd make little orcs and think like Lord of the Rings stuff. But then a company like Games Workshop comes along, and the idea was that they made an adventure game where you could request what you would want, and they would make you guys. You'd be like, okay, I just finished reading the second book in the Lord of the Rings series, and I want to make an army of Uruk-hai. And they're like, cool, we're going to make like 50 Uruk-hai for you. And you're like, oh, awesome.
Over time, games evolved from moral lessons and maps of empires into stories we could enter. A falling block puzzle like Tetris can pull the mind into rhythm and problem solving. A role-playing game like Final Fantasy can place us inside danger, transformation, and heroism. But tabletop games do something stranger still. They make the story belong to everyone at the table.
And then you get things like Stranger Things. And all of a sudden, everybody wants to do Dungeons and Dragons, which is fantastic.
And I feel like it used to be more of the obscure. D&D used to be like the nerd thing that you'd almost get like looked away from for doing. And now these days, it's like a pinnacle of gaming. It's recognized as, one of the more significant dice games at this point.
It really brought together a culture that had nowhere else to go.
It's like really diving into it and not just being a surface level observer, but like actually pouring some of yourself and finding some of yourself in those characters and IP.
And games like Dungeons and Dragons revealed something powerful. Winning was never really the point. Fantasy can become a container for real emotion.
My dad passed away when I was young. I was 10. I really got into it, and you don't realize it as a kid. Obviously, I threw myself into gaming as a way to like escape reality.
I get to run games for my friends, and I've been able to open them up to other emotions that they don't feel typically throughout the week. My players have cried with me just from fantasy situations, and then after the session they went, actually that helped me a lot. I was dealing with X, Y, and Z. This helped me explore that. I didn't realize I was going through that, and it's been really eye-opening. When you step into a table, it's to get rid of everything else in the day and like the week that has been bothering you. You can put down the work phone, you can step away from the trauma of the day-to-day, parents who are bothering you, friends or conflicts that are frictioning. Suddenly your biggest challenge is getting enough gold to buy a wagon to get to the next town. It's the next quip or joke at the table. I had a player who lost somebody in their family, and their character was trying to find their lost relative. And throughout playing that story, we ended up learning the experiences of their relative. And we had to pause the episode. We had to sit down and talk for a little bit. It got very to the core of like a human experience.
And that kind of catharsis, that willingness to trust a story, a table, and a group of friends can lead to even bigger breakthroughs.
When my father passed, I took all the stories I was just telling you as a little kid, and I turned it into a novel, and I wrote my own IP, because that was the way for me to sort of grasp with something so horrific happening in my life. I mean, think about it. We all have our own dragons. We all have our own dragons.
But the dragons are not always inside the game. Sometimes the real challenge is making sure everyone who wants to play can find their way to the table.
One of the biggest things that you run into, and it's something that's a personal foil of mine, is I don't like the idea of gatekeeping. We have a lot of women who play in our store. We have a real high propensity of minority players. We have a high propensity of trans players. We have a lot of LGBTQ plus players. So I think that that's a lot different than it was, again, 15, 20 years ago. Your job is not to be a gatekeeper. Your job is to be the lighthouse. So the gatekeeper is to keep you away from stuff, and that's not okay. The lighthouse's job is to look out for dangers and make sure that you can see what's happening. Like I said, games are for everybody. It doesn't really get any simpler than that. I think that regardless of what space god you worship or what pronouns you use or who you take to bed or what bathroom you use, you should be able to play games and have a good time. The rest of that doesn't matter.
And as the audience grew, so too did the universe of gaming and IP.
And then you fast forward to now and everybody's like, why is all this stuff blowing up now? And I'm like, it's because the kids that grew up with that stuff are now in charge at a lot of those companies. And they're like, you know what I really liked when I was a kid? Star Trek. So you're like, awesome. Let's make some more Star Trek. But I'm like, Gen Xers, that's who thought this up. So it's because the kids that grew up loving that stuff are now in positions of authority.
And when the world suddenly became smaller during COVID, games became one way people reached for connection. Around kitchen tables, through screens, and inside familiar worlds that made isolation feel a little less isolating.
Once COVID happened, we were all stuck doing stuff. So games became more popular. And then now, even with phones, we're still doing the games. They have blown up into newer things. Because, Yahtzee, all the card games, Rummy, all that's going to be around forever. But having the face-to-face interaction is really what makes your life better. And that you can post about that. It makes it more fun. So that the game has changed because it encouraged us to get better. Now that COVID's gone, it has stayed in a nice pattern and it's just continued to get bigger.
As more people found themselves inside game worlds, more creators began asking, what kind of world could I build? Designers, writers, artists, and players started crossing over, turning fandom into mechanics, stories into systems, and personal obsession into new games for others to experience.
This was my first game, The Boys, about 5 years ago. None of the three of us who built this game had ever made a board game before, but we had different levels of experience. The other two, one of them is board game fanatic. He plays board games. He is currently assisting. Last I talked to him, there's 16 different people who are making different games. He's assisting them. And the other one, the graphical artist, he plays D&D every week. So we had very different pedigrees and all that, and we knew what would work, what to do, and that's sort of how it generated.
I do fiction for game books. I do rules design as well. I started out as just doing fiction. I was just doing the stories and inventing characters and plot lines and things for the games. And then a few years in, I got the opportunity to work with Warner Brothers and the Babylon 5 license through Mongoose Publishing, and they gave me the ability to originally start creating my own rules. And I hadn't really done that outside of the home, a bunch of homebrew things for your home games and stuff, but nothing for other people to really see. And I loved it. I loved the idea. Anytime that I heard someone talk on one of the forums or then later on Facebook pages and things, talking about how a rules interaction or something that I had come up with, was changing their game or something that they really enjoyed, that was chum in the water.
A lot of the pop culture shows are starting to realize that there's a lot more. It's the Reese's Pieces effect, right? It's chocolate and peanut butter. It's whoever put those together, this is a great idea. And I think that people are starting to realize now that if you're a gamer, you might be into comics. And if you're a comic fan, you might be into games. And I think that they're starting to do a lot more connect the dots kind of thing. It seems crazy in retrospect to be why did it take them so long to figure this out? But it's good to see the progress. And every year the gaming, a buddy of mine does a big gaming sort of event every year at San Diego, and we've gone the last 3 years. And I remember it went from 70 people to 100 people. This year was 180 people. And it's just because there's more gaming stuff that happens every year at San Diego.
Like many of the games we play, the gaming industry is a world of ambition, dedication, and luck. And there is no one way into this world. And every gamer and creator has their own reason for entering.
I got tired of working dead-end jobs, just retail to retail I ended up in a cubicle at a State Farm place. And my wife at the time was like, you need to do something else. This is killing you.
My mom got very sick, early onset Alzheimer's, went home to take care of her. 10 years passed, college was in the rearview mirror, didn't really have any trades, was looking around, ended up writing a video game treatment.
The designers, builders, writers, and creators who push through fear and doubt often find more than an industry. They find purpose, creative momentum, and a community of people who understand the same strange language.
So we decided to try and get in and buy in on a comic book shop with a friend of mine. Part of that process, we ended up at a convention that was retailers only. While I was there, I ran into a bunch of guys that were peddling a miniatures game that was going to come out the following year, and we played a bunch of this unmade game. I got to peek behind the curtain that night, and when we were all done and got done playing with all these fancy things, I gave them my perforated Avery business card that sent them to my MySpace page. And a couple of months later, they reached out to me and said, "Hey, it says you've done some writing. Our staff writer has left the company very abruptly. We'd like you to do a test piece." They liked it and turned around and said, "Can you do 70,000 words by August?" And I said, sure. Yeah, that sounds doable, having no concept of what that actually looks like. And that was War Machine Prime, Privateer Press's award-winning. We won 3 Origins Awards the following year for it. And that was how I knew this was for me, that this was going to be what I do until I can't hold the pen any longer.
I think it's really from the video games that I get this fresh perspective. And I definitely understand what is entertaining. And I definitely understand what is challenging, what is too challenging, and mechanics that work. And I also have a great sense of how much time do I want to spend doing this before it needs to be entertaining again, all that stuff. So I think the constructions of the game end up, it helps me make them really sound, but also, the value of what is really fun here, what is going on here that we like.
The road to success as a game creator or even a player lies in the communities we build and the collaboration that ensues. After all, games are about teams, and teams are about collaboration.
I like being part of a team. As a team sports guy, I'm always like, I'm only going to be as good as the team I surround myself with. My advice would be, don't try to do everything yourself. You're never going to get the results that you want unless it's something that you are good at and it is in your wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. But even if it's something you're good at, you can't have 4 things. You can't have design, editing, marketing, and publishing and have them all be equally important to you. That's not what important means. You have to have one thing that is yours, that's your focus, and then hand stuff off to other people that's their thing and that's their focus. You're always going to get a better product. And I think the partnerships are important.
It's a collaborative storytelling experience.
Ultimately, it comes down to this.
Play games, have fun. That's just how it is. If you want to have fun, you should play games. If you want to play games, you should have fun.
It's a completely freeing experience where you get to shed the stress for 4 hours and just be with your friend.
I'm going to invite 3 people over, and we're going to play and have fun, make memories. That's what it's about.
It was just a great time to bond with family. We'd all get a controller in our hands and, play games together. So board games, video games, trading card games, anything like that.
My gamer friends were always my closest friends.
It's for the fans, so we can commiserate with our same passions.
Games are for everybody.
Gaming has traveled a long road, from toy soldiers and homemade adventures to massive conventions, licensed worlds, and stories shared across tables and screens. But beneath all that growth, the heart of gaming remains beautifully simple. Games give us a place to practice courage, connection, imagination, loss, strategy, failure, and joy. They remind us that play is not an escape from being human. It is one of the ways we survive being human. And sometimes, the best way to understand who we are is to play. Welcome to the Geekdom. Come as you are.